Coming up, evacuate the primary school children forced to flee after an explosion on site.
Now, the ITV News in London with Nina Hossain.
Good evening, welcome to the ITV News in London. Tonight's main stories. Evacuate the children forced to flee a primary school in Surrey after an explosion.
Just a huge explosion, and I looked out towards the guys in the kitchen and it just went red.
The Met warns it might have to stop investigating missing people because of huge cuts. Why today's Remembrance March was so important for this soldier from St Albans who served in Afghanistan. And postcode snobbery or community spirit, why Whitton is divorcing Hounslow. A primary school in Surrey was evacuated this lunchtime after reports of an explosion on site. 8 fire engines were scrambled to the grounds of the school in Weybridge after people nearby heard a loud explosion and saw plumes of black smoke coming from the building. Anxious parents headed to the school, but everyone managed to get out unhurt. Lucrezia Millerini is live at the school this evening. Lucrezia.
Yes, Nina, a much calmer scene here this evening compared to just a few hours ago when firefighters were called out to tackle a serious fire here. If you look behind me, there's a construction site just metres away from St George's Junior School. It's actually part of the school. They're building an extension and work has been happening here for a couple of months now. As you mentioned, you can imagine the anxiety and concern from parents when they heard that their children had been evacuated from the school. Some of those children, let's not forget, as young as 3 years old. But the good news, as you say, is that no one was injured, no pupils, staff or indeed construction workers. But of course, the minute that word got out that there was a fire, those emergency steps had to be taken. It was just after 12:30 this afternoon when fire services were called out to St George's Primary School here in Weybridge after reports of large plumes of smoke rising in the air above it. Local residents described hearing loud bangs before seeing the smoke.
Well, just a huge explosion, and I looked out towards the guys in the kitchen and it just went red.
We saw this great, huge cloud of black, horrible smoke, and we thought, oh gosh, and I said to my husband, I hope that's not my old school. And as we got nearer and nearer, then the traffic was diverted. There it was, all in flames.
Around 600 children attend the fee-paying primary school, which includes a reception and nursery. All pupils and staff were immediately evacuated to the safety of a nearby sports field.
I asked my colleague if I could just stand up and check because something made me think that this was a bit out of order, and to our mutual horror we realised that we had an emergency on our hand within seconds. So I'm very proud to say that all our routines kicked into place. We've practiced fire drills every term.
It took 8 fire engines and 44 firefighters using a ladder platform and water carrier to tackle the fire, which had broken out on the roof of an adjoining construction site.
The roof of the building under construction was quite severely involved in fire, so quickly we increased the number of fire engines on scene. The crews worked really hard and really effectively to bring the fire under control. And now we're in a process of carrying out investigations and just making sure the fire's fully out.
It's not yet clear what caused the roof to ignite. There are reports that a blowtorch being used by a construction worker could have been involved and that set light to a gas canister. Fire officers are still investigating. Well, those investigations continue throughout the afternoon. No doubt they will continue over the weekend as well. Until then, we will not know what caused this fire. In the meantime, the school have commended its staff. They have also commended the work of Surrey Fire and Rescue for their quick handling of events, getting those children out to safety and also for putting out the fire. And the head teacher, as you saw in my report, well, he assures me the school is back to business on Monday.
Lucrezia Millerini, thank you. A huge fire has also broken out tonight at the Battersea Arts Centre in South London. The arts venue in the former Battersea Town Hall was evacuated shortly after 4 o'clock this evening. Carolyn Sim is there. Carolyn, what more can you tell us?
Well, it's a scene of terrible upset here at Battersea Arts Centre. You can't quite see the actual fire, but if you look over my shoulder, you can see the smoke coming out of the top of the building. There are still some bright orange flames. I mean, this building is still alight. There are 12 or so fire engines here, and I'm told about 80 firefighters have been sent here. They're preparing breathing apparatus. There's still a lot of work for them to do here. And you can see the water hoses still going straight into the building there. So this fire is still very much alight. It's still very much an active zone, and they're hoping that they can contain the fire and save as much of the building here as possible.
All right, Carolyn Sim, thank you. The Met's top officer has warned his force will have to pick and choose what it prioritises. It makes £1.4 billion of cuts in the next 5 years. The Commissioner, Bernard Hogan-Howe, suggested resources for things like missing people investigations could be vulnerable. One victims charity told ITV News they find that very concerning. Here's our senior correspondent, Ronke Phillips.
London's next generation of police officers. The new recruits who, according to the prediction from their commissioner, will have to face the prospect in the future of doing less with less.
There will be some less officers, but I think we could be more effective if we invest in technology and invest in giving our officers new skills. And it will mean that we have to work differently in the future, because not only are we seeing money reduce, we're seeing a growing population, we're seeing new challenges like cyber come along. So we've got to be positive.
The two men who oversee policing in the capital watched as 216 new officers were sworn in at the police training centre in Hendon. These are just a few of the 42,000 people who go missing in the capital every year. It cost the Metropolitan Police £50 million, but only a fraction of the cases has anything to do with crime. The Mayor agrees this is the kind of service which is a drain on the budget and could be handled by other agencies.
Huge numbers of extra burdens fall on the Met the whole time. The search for missing children, often the whole hacking business, all this sort of thing can suddenly be piled on the Met's plate, and it will cost tens, hundreds of millions. And that we need to think about ways of reducing that.
But some of the Met's biggest cases, like the Alice Gross investigation, have started out as missing persons inquiries, and charities who rely on the resources and publicity the police can generate say they're worried about the future.
We understand the pressure on police resources and policing in general, and at the same time we know that missing people are vulnerable. So we think it's vital, because of that vulnerability, that the police do play a role in trying to find people that are missing and getting them somewhere safe.
Many of these new recruits will spend their time doing the work of other agencies, such as dealing with the mentally ill or taking people to hospital. The hard choice of the future for the country's biggest force will be redefining what visible policing looks like. Ronke Phillips, ITV News.
Well, two of the people who would like to become the next Mayor of London could inherit the new look Met. So how would they help the force keep Londoners safe? I'm joined by the Labour MP for Tottenham, David Lammy, and Ivan Massow, who wants to be the Conservative candidate for Mayor. Thank you both for coming in. David, if I can start with you. Hard choices ahead. Stark warnings there from the Met Commissioner. How would you help the Met protect London in the future?
Well, I'm afraid at neighbourhood level we're seeing policing disappearing. We had 19,000 bikes stolen last year, only 666 of them ever made it to court. Burglaries going up, in fact, only 5% made it to court. This assumption that there's low-level crime, victimless crime, it's not victimless. There's always a victim. I can think of a family in Tottenham at the moment looking for Courtney. Where is he? 4 weeks he's been missing. They're in despair. And now we're told that the Met's going to step away from it.
Zero tolerance. How do you pay for that? How do you pay for the broken
broken windows has consequences. You have to pay for it. That's why I've said 30p extra a year on the council tax will fund those extra police officers. It's important.
Ivan Massow, how would you do the same? How would you help the force protect Londoners in future?
Well, I'm really interested in the whole question of policing in London and the job the Met fulfil, because there is a perception, as David said, that crimes aren't being dealt with. And one of the things recently that David came up with was a look at this kind of idea that your crime wouldn't simply be dealt with, and I don't know if that's true. In fact, if people do report a crime, it does get followed up. It's just we don't bother because we don't think it will happen. I've been a victim of crime 3 times in the last 2 months. I live a couple of blocks away, and it's always been followed up amazingly. But there is a case, I think, for maybe devolving some of the responsibilities of the Met back to the Home Office, maybe even like terrorism services, because counter-terrorism, that whole kind of the slightly more, I hate to say the word, but glamorous side of policing means that some people feel that the Metropolitan Police don't really focus on crimes that are important to Londoners.
But the money, whether it's for the Met or for the Home Office, simply isn't there. The cuts are coming.
Yeah,
so how do you pay for that? Because you're just moving the bill to somebody else.
Well, as Boris has just said, and unfortunately, you do need to look again at whether the police are handling some kind of, like 40% of the calls they get are mental health related. You know, they're dealing with an awful lot of things that just aren't their job.
And this is one of the issues the Met said they might not be able to work with people with mental health problems in the future. David Lammy, we were very clear Labour's position before the election in 1997, what they wanted. They were tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Are we getting any clear message from the Labour Party at the moment? We were looking at the website earlier. Policing or crime, it comes, I think it was 16th on the website. Really hard to find what your policies are on policing. No pledges regarding money or police numbers. Is it not a priority for the next Labour Party that wants to be in government?
The Labour Party has said that we're going to abolish commissioners, which are a waste of money. The Labour Party has said that we want to restore neighbourhood-level policing and restore those teams that people relied on, which have disappeared. And the Labour Party, of course, is committed to crime at a time when there is an assumption in terms of recorded crime that it's falling.
It doesn't seem
but we
like
know
a priority.
that people are
it's not one of the issues that
we know that people aren't recording crime in the same way.
And very briefly, is it a priority for the Conservative Party in the next election?
It's a massive priority for me, and I think there are going to be some really creative ways in which we can help. But there's even a chance that you could look at the role of traffic enforcement officers at the moment for certain duties and stop them from being the sort of pariah they're seen as in many cases.
So we've got to get creative. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to bring it to a close there, but Ivan Massow and David Lammy, thank you very much. Thank you. The City of London came to a halt earlier to remember those who fought and died in Afghanistan. The 13-year conflict claimed more than 450 British lives and changed forever the lives of many others. So what did today's service at St Paul's, a military flypast and a special march through the streets mean to the veterans and those who are still grieving? Toby Sadler reports.
Paul Pryor is one of many Londoners whose life was changed by Afghanistan. Marching today to remember lost colleagues, but also to celebrate his own survival. In 2009, Paul was a medic on an Afghan police training team. He saw a lot of casualties. On his return, he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
I got myself in trouble with the police, first time I'd ever done that, which wasn't a proud moment. I stayed in my sister's house for 6 months without leaving the 4 walls of the house.
Paul is now an ambassador for a military charity helping other veterans in the capital who are struggling with PTSD. Speaking before the march, he was looking forward to the challenge.
It's quite daunting, but it's actually quite nice as well, because back in my hometown was such, and getting to see everyone, friends and family can come down, which they never used to really get to see me in my uniform or even anything to do with the military.
Thousands of people lined the streets of the capital to watch Paul and the other veterans. A flypast was framed by the city's landmarks. Although this was a day of national importance, a significant number of people who lived in London died fighting the Taliban. Of the 453 UK troops who died in Afghanistan, more than 40 were from London and the home counties, and many more returned with life-changing mental and physical injuries. This was a chance for many friends and family to pay their respects and reflect on the sacrifices made. Anita Lee from Welwyn Garden City was one. Her son William lost both legs in a Taliban attack. Today he stood up and marched.
It's really important. It's the end of 5 years of treatment and hard work. And as a mother, so sorry, excuse me. Today's probably the time when I can actually go.
The veterans were later welcomed to the Guildhall in the city. It was a chance to meet the Prime Minister and members of the royal family, to get an acknowledgement that for many who fought in Afghanistan, life will never be the same. Toby Sadler, ITV News.
And there'll be much more to come on that day of remembrance on the ITV News at 6:30. Still to come on this programme.
Why are you so pessimist in life? It's more difficult to succeed.
Mourinho turns on his critics in the media. And change of address, why residents in Witton are binning their Hounslow postcode. But first, hundreds of young apprentices fear they won't be able to finish their training after the charity that supports them had its funding pulled. 300 people are taught carpentry, plumbing, plastering and bricklaying at 10 Building Lives training academies across London. Luke Hanrahan has the story.
With your trowel, you need to wet it up to make sure that...
An apprenticeship scheme with a 90% success rate. Since it opened 5 years ago, it's helped thousands of people to find work in the construction industry.
There we go.
Gabriel is one of those whose life was turned round by this charity. He now works here. But Building Lives could soon face closure.
I will be distraught, in my personal opinion, because it's something that has helped and assisted me towards reaching my goals and my endeavours. And I know there's a lot of people, I've got 32 learners in my own particular centre who will suffer and will be affected by this.
300 apprentices here and at 9 other Building Live centres across London now face the stark reality that they won't be able to complete their courses after the Construction Industry Training Board, which provides funding for apprentices, decided to withdraw it.
My mum's a single mum at home. I was hoping to support her in a way once I get the qualification, just to help her. But now the course, the fund has stopped. It's a huge shock to all of us.
An absolute shock. We have done everything possible to try and reverse this situation. So we did everything we could to change our model, but we just need some support in the interim before we can, so we can save ourselves, basically.
The Construction Industry Training Board says it had no other choice but to withdraw grant scheme funding.
Building Lives do incredibly important work, and we hope their work continues. Our funding rules don't allow them to fund them, and we should never have been in a position of funding them in the first place. What we do hope is that we can find a successful solution where they find alternative sources of funding and can continue their good work.
The clock is now ticking for the 40 people employed by Building Lives and the hundreds of apprentices it currently supports. Luke Hanrahan, ITV News.
Next, sport, and Jose Mourinho is back to his confident, spiky best.
ITV London Sports Report, sponsored by WeWantAnyCar.com, the Cash for Cars website.
Mourinho said today he has closed the chapter on Chelsea's Champions League defeat to Paris Saint-Germain on Wednesday. He said his side is only looking ahead, starting with Southampton on Sunday, and he's confident his group of players will win the Premier League.
The people that was out of the Champions League last Wednesday is the same people that is top of the Premier League since day one, is the same people that won the Carling Cup, is the same people that is going to win the Premier League. We are exactly the same people.
And in a sometimes spiky news conference, the special one also had some special career advice for a reporter who upset him.
Why are you so pessimist in life? It's more difficult to succeed. You have to be optimistic, you know? Maybe you are a guy with great potential and you don't move on because you are so pessimist. Be optimistic. Be optimistic. Believe in yourself. Be positive.
Jose Mourinho's advice to a Sky Sports journalist a little earlier today. Arsene Wenger insisted his side won't be distracted by next week's crunch tie with Monaco as they prepare to play West Ham in the Premier League. Arsenal face the Hammers as they battle to hold on to third place and secure a spot in next season's Champions League competition.
Our target is just to, I agree with you that it's for us a very important game in the Champions League, but tomorrow is as well, and to rotate, I always rotate game by game, but never more than 2 or 3.
Wenger's opposite number tomorrow, Sam Allardyce, says his side will have to be on top form to beat an Arsenal side coming off the back of a good result on Monday.
I watched Arsenal play Manchester United in the Cup with a thrilling encounter there. I watched how well they played, so we know the quality of play that they've got. We know how difficult it is at the Emirates, but we'll go with a... I mean, strangely enough, we've actually gone there a couple of times and got in front, but it hasn't lasted very long.
Next tonight, fancy a more upmarket address without having to move house. Then follow the example of a group of residents in Whitton. They were fed up with having to put Hounslow as their hometown, so they lobbied the Royal Mail to have their address changed. After 40 years of fighting, they finally won, and it could mean their house prices soar. Ria Chatterjee went to meet the women who say they've won the postcode lottery.
What's in a postcode? Apparently a lot when it's a question of leafy Richmond versus urban Hounslow. The residents of Whitton aren't happy.
We live in one of the 35 roads that are under the London Borough of Richmond, but we have a post town called Hounslow.
It's serious stuff.
Anyone living in Hounslow, they're in the borough of Hounslow, whereas we're in Richmond Borough, but we're not in Hounslow Borough. So
confusing.
I think so, yeah.
So Lynn, do these signs help or add to the confusion?
I think they add to the confusion because, as you can see, this one says welcome to Hounslow, which is that away. Further down the road it says welcome to Richmond, which is that away, and we live over that away.
No one is quite sure how this happened, but it could soon be corrected. Royal Mail have proposed to add Whitton to their postcode address file, which means the town will be officially recognised on letters, although to residents it means much more.
Well, I think there's a great sense of community here in Whitton. It's one of the 5 town centres in Richmond Borough, and people want Whitton on the map. So I think it's very important for all sorts of reasons, but really to have a sense of belonging.
Residents pay their council tax to Richmond Borough. Some also say the Hounslow tag has an adverse impact on house prices.
Part of it must be wanting to be associated with a more affluent area.
Well, possibly. I mean, I would say anybody would want to have an address that reflects where they think they live.
But where do they live? It's Whitton, in Richmond, in Hounslow, until the Royal Mail decide otherwise. Ria Chatterjee, ITV News.
Our main headline in London, St George's School in Weybridge in Surrey was evacuated earlier after an explosion and a fire. No one was injured. It's time for the weather, and we had another beautiful sunrise over the capital this morning, taken by the RNLI at Tower Bridge at dawn. But will it last into the weekend? Here's Alex Beresford.
Hello, good evening. It's going to be quite cloudy over this weekend. And where the cloud does build up, we could see a few spots of drizzle possible at times. It's also going to be feeling a fair bit colder, with a noticeable northeasterly wind reducing temperatures back into single figures. Tonight it's going to be quite chilly as well, lows of 2 or 3 in places. Out in rural areas we could see a touch of frost in places. With that cloud cover increasing from the east overnight, it means a cloudy start to the weekend, and as I say, we could see some spots of drizzle likely across southern areas. Temperature wise, it's going to be a colder feeling day in the afternoon. We're looking at highs of between 5 and 8 degrees Celsius at the very best. So wrap up a bit warmer. We'll also have that no sport northeasterly wind and still the possibility of a few spots of drizzle, if not the odd shower during the afternoon. Mothering Sunday is looking quite cloudy at the moment with, well, some more rain to come at times. On Monday, it's drier, not so bright though, still staying quite cloudy. But Tuesday, the weather improves and also it's going to be a bit milder. Temperatures returning into double figures. Have a good weekend.
Before we go, time to have a look at what's been making the headlines online this week. With reaction to some good news for commuters, the amazing footage of some road rage and the 95-year-old runner breaking records. Here's Chris Howells with a look at the week on the web.
This week, automatic refunds every time your train fails to arrive on time. Passengers delayed for just 2 minutes could get compensation without going through the lengthy process of filling out forms. The new scheme will be trialled first on the C2C line in Essex. After that, it could be rolled out across the network. Plenty of comments about it on our Facebook page. Ponticus Sheikh says commuters' time is money. This is the only way to make train companies respect their customers. But Stacey Moon says the idea is ridiculous. If you travel by public transport, you expect some kind of delay. Next, the new sprint record set by a 95-year-old retired dentist. There really is no stopping Dr. Charles Euxter. This was the moment he shaved over 2 seconds off the 200-metre sprint record at Lee Valley in North London. He was competing in the over 95s group with a performance that even took him by surprise.
I felt as if I was running like a young deer, like a young buck. Frankly, I wasn't aiming for the record. Just running down my lane and minding my own business, and something strange happened. I broke a record.
Another of the week's most clicked videos was the moment a motorist drove off with a man clinging to his car bonnet. The victim's ordeal began when the driver hit his wing mirror in a car park in Camberley. He then tried to call police but ended up grabbing the windscreen wipers to stop himself falling under the wheels. Police eventually caught up with the driver, who has now been jailed. Finally, if you're tired of playing Angry Birds or Candy Crush on the way home, here's something new to keep you entertained. It may look rather familiar. Cast your mind back a few years when Snake was one of the only games you could play on your phone. Well, it's back on rather a grand scale and you could get the chance to play it. Where is it and how do you join in? Find out by going to our website at itv.com/London. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for ITV London. Same goes for Twitter. And if you've got a story, email, contact us at itvlondon.com.
Thank you, Chris. Also on our website tonight, fitting tribute to Terry Pratchett, who died yesterday. 2 London Underground stations dedicated their thought for the day to the best-selling author. You can find out what they had to say at itv.com/London. But that's all from the London team so far this evening. Stay with us for the national and international news with Natasha Kaplinsky and James Mates. From me, bye-bye and enjoy your weekend.